I'm here with Coach Steve Turner, head coach of the Gonzaga College High School, head basketball coach. He's been here for several years, four-time conference champion. 2016 was National Coach of the Year. Is that correct, Coach?
That's correct.
I really appreciate the time today.
Thanks for having me.
So my first question, if you had some advice for a middle school athlete who wanted to come play at Gonzaga, what personal traits do you look for in your players?
The first thing is academics. I look at our school as an Ivy League type situation in terms of our conference. We're similar to the Virginias of the ACC, and I would say the Vanderbilts of the SEC and Stanford of the Pac-12. Academics are a priority, so being number one, the best student athlete you can be is going to be one of the first traits that I have to look at in terms of being able to make sure we can get a young man admitted here. But we're going to follow those guys because they're pretty good basketball players as well. Team-oriented, guys who want to be able to be a part of a team, to be able to create success for the team. So those are some of the things that we definitely look at in the young men that we're looking at when they're in middle school.
What advice would you have for the athletes to become better basketball players, better athletes, to prepare to play at this level?
Putting in time on your deficiencies. You know, a lot of guys like to get in the gym and they want to jump into shooting threes and dunking the ball, but you want to be the most well-rounded player you can be, and that's putting in the work on the things that you know that you've got to get better at. Working on your offhand, really working on shooting. Shooting has become so important to the game of basketball all the way up to the highest level, and that's the NBA. You watch these teams now, like a Houston. They want to take more threes than they take twos. So being able to be the best shooter you can be, ball handler you can be, and understanding your role. Like, everyone has a role on a team. Not every kid on the team is going to be able to be the guy that can put up 20 points, but there's a value to a lot of young men and who they are. I use Draymond Green as an example. His value to the Golden State Warriors is his ability to defend, his toughness, his ability to share the ball and not assume the role of thinking that he has to be the scorer. So there's so many different ways that you can be a part of the team, but you got to be able to understand who you are as a player.
Same question for your high school athlete. You are very involved with your players. You're very involved with your players and their families and their development, and you're very involved in helping them get to the next level. What advice do you have for the high school kid to better prepare for that jump, that really big transition, go from high school to college?
Again, it's very similar to what it would be as a middle schooler coming to us. Every level is going to be a little different in terms of the talent pool and the level of play, but it's really being able to develop the fundamentals of the game, being the best ball handler you can be, being the best passer you can be, becoming the best shooter you can be. For that level, moving from high school to college, it's really the training, developing your body. The physicality of the game at the next level is always going to be tougher and stronger. Being able to put in that time in the weight room. You've added so many other aspects to the game now with people working with yoga, stretching, keeping your body right, your mental right, and your nutrition right.
So you talked about working on your body, getting ready for the college game. Would you say that that is the biggest adjustment for young players?
I think a lot of the players, for sure. I mean, the kids come to us, it's Chick-fil-A and Chipotle every day. But when you're moving on to that next level and you're those night in and night outs in the ACC and the leagues of that level, you've got to be able to have your physicality in terms of the mental piece as well as your body being right for you to be able to last every single day. You've got a regimented schedule with study halls, tutoring, class, along with the practices, then along with lifting and working out. You've got to be able to do all those different things, and I think one of the big adjustments for most kids leaving high school to college is the ability to change their nutrition as well as understanding how much the time that they got to put in working on their body and keeping their body right.
So you touched on nutrition. How important do you think hydration, rest, nutrition, routines, how important are routines for the young athlete?
I think it's one of the major pieces. And if you don't follow those routines, you see what happens to certain guys. They get out of shape in season, which is something that shouldn't happen. They find themselves getting injuries. We like to talk a lot about preventative maintenance and being hydrated, being stretched before and after practices are part of those routines that young men don't realize they have to make a part of the routine every day.
So a lot of young players think that they're going to make their way to the NBA, make their way to college just by being really good basketball players. But you touched on the importance of academics getting into Gonzaga. How important are academics making that transition from high school to college?
Oh, it's huge, especially when you talk about levels of play. You know, there are schools that can't admit certain kids who might be five-star players, five-star athletes who are best players in the country if they're not taking care of business in the classroom. So it's so important that the books have to be as much of a priority to who you are as a student athlete as being on the court. We preach that with our guys every single day, and certainly preach that to them and their families when we're recruiting them, and how important that is to give them the best opportunities for themselves when they're done with the 4 years here at Gonzaga.
So you guys play a very rigorous schedule. The WCAC is one of the top conferences in the country, and your players are under a lot of physical stress and demand. Do you see injuries as a big part of high school sports? And in particular, are there injuries that you see are more common than others?
I continue to feel that you see more injuries with the kids who are putting it all into one sport. I think you got to be able to have that ability early on, through grade school, middle school, and even through a part of high school if you can, to cross-train. I think the kids who you see with the major injuries now, certainly in our sport, are the kids who are doing it 365 days a year. And the kids who play multiple sports, I don't feel like I see as many injuries, because I think those guys are using different aspects of their body through the other sport because of the way that the games are played, which allows their body to be able to be used and not overworked.
I think that you hit on a lot of key points there. We've known each other for several years. I've known some of your kids, and I know your kids are working with some of the top medical providers in the area. What tips have you gotten from the medical community to help improve performance or longevity for young athletes?
Mine has been sitting in a doctor book. No, but really the rest. Like, I think the rest is probably one of the biggest things that all of our kids are not taking advantage of. And your body starts to wear down if it's being overused. It's just you know, we talk about our body like we talk about our car. If you're not putting the fuel in, the right fuel, to allow it to work the way it needs to, and also letting it rest, it gets burnt out. We really try to, you know, talk to people like you about what is best for our kids in terms of rest versus work. And we try to make sure that we get our guys here at Gonzaga, and certainly the kids that we have an opportunity to touch in the community, to understand that it's important to maintain your body and get maintenance checks on your body so that we can prevent those type of injuries that we continue to see with certain kids.
When I look at your schedule, it looks like you guys actually practice what you preach. Do you build a rest season or rest time of year in for the young athlete?
We do. Getting back to school, I guess I can kind of talk in the year calendar. We'll go back to school late August. And those first couple weeks of school, it's all about the academics, getting ourselves back into the frame of mind of school, and not just the basketball on the court. But early September, we'll get our guys back into 3 days of weight training and conditioning, a couple days of yoga, and a couple days of play, along with our study halls that are involved with them in terms of making sure they're taking care of business in the classroom. And we'll do that up to our preseason, and we'll take another week off prior to tryouts in early November. And you're going through season. And within our league, we have to have a certain amount of days of rest throughout each week. So those are built into our schedule. You know, one of the things that happens for our guys, as soon as the season's over, they're running right to their AAU teams. So we kind of shut what we're doing here down so they're not doubling up. We'll get back together with them in late May, play summer ball through June, and then in July they're back with their AAU team. So we shut down what's going on here for the team here, so that again they're not doubling up, and then we take the month of from late July through all of August off.
So you touched on AAU basketball. As a head basketball coach, what's your overall impression of travel sports and AAU sports?
I think they're necessary, but I think you have to, like anything, you eat pizza all day, you're going to become fat.
Right.
You got to take everything in moderation. And I think our guys do a really good job of being able to combine the two to make it work for them in terms of the long-term goal, which is to potentially have an opportunity to use basketball as a vehicle to get to college and get a free education. So the way that the summer is set up for scouting and college coaches to be able to get out and see them, they need both. And you know, this past summer was the first example of it getting back to really showing the need of both, because the live periods were changed. So I think it's necessary. I think as a family and as a parent, You got to make sure you're finding the right organization that has the core values that you want for your child, and be able to make sure that that's the situation you put your son or your daughter in.
So is it your opinion that the real benefit of youth sports is to give you leverage to get into schools or better colleges and have better opportunities coming out of high school?
No, but I think it's where some of the opportunities lie, because that's when the colleges get to see you. A lot of colleges don't get to see you right in the season. They're more following the guys that they've already been on in season. A lot of the evaluation periods seem to come in the spring and in the summer.
Speaking with young families and parents of young athletes, we both know that parents can get a little overworked in this process, get a little emotionally invested in this process. What advice would you give to a family to help them maximize the college recruiting process, or to best put their son or daughter in a really good position?
I've always had the motto, respect the process. And some people say it's cliche, but if you look at it and you look at everyone's situation, they're going to be different. I tell parents that every kid is a different branch on the tree, and their process is going to be different. Don't get caught into the Joneses and what's happening for the next young man next to your child. Allow his process to be his process, because they're never going to be the same. And some kids are going to come earlier than others, and then there's going to be some that come later. And your child might be the one that comes later. Don't get over anxious. Continue to talk to your coaches. Continue to find out where things are going for your child at the moment, but don't get caught into what's going on for the next kid versus your own child, because it's never going to be the same.
And I know it's hard to put a complete ratio on this, 50-50, 60-40, but what percent of young basketball players' success is just natural gifts, and what percent of it is them actually doing the work?
That's hard to say. I mean, I think for a lot of them, early, the ones who, again, parents start watching and wanting it for their kid, it's the natural gift. But I think the kids who put in the work are going to have that opportunity to have some of those same opportunities the kid who may be the more gifted and talented early on in his career. You got to respect and understand that there's different levels, and every kid is not going to get the same level. But I believe there's a place for everyone if you put the work in and you allow yourself to have the opportunity for that level to be what it is. Sometimes our dreams, I feel like, hurt us because we want so bad to be in the ACC or at the highest level of Division I, but in reality, your child may just be a Division II basketball player. But there's nothing wrong with that. If you're true to what most parents say their ultimate goal is to be able to use the sport to get a free education, then the opportunity is there for you. But if you're not really living that to be true, then you're going to mess up this process.
So I know that you put a big emphasis on strength training. I know that you make weight training part of the calendar year for your young athlete. Talk a little bit about the importance of strength training.
It's another piece to what I like to say is the preventative maintenance. Our league is the best conference in high school basketball. Night in and night out, the other schools in our league, they're doing a lot of what we do, if not the same thing. If you're not prepping to build yourself physically to endure the physicality of our league and the toughness of our league, you could find yourself falling behind. And you've got to be doing it now to prepare yourself if college is the ultimate goal, because it's going to be a part of your routine when you get to college.
Yeah, I've heard some coaches mention that high school isn't really about preparing for high school, it's preparing for the next level and preparing for college athletics, college lifestyle. Do you agree with that?
I would definitely agree with that.
As a head coach, you wear lots of hats. You're not just a basketball coach, you're a counselor to some of these kids, you're a family advisor, tutor, all the rest. If you had access to a program or a person who could help coach parents on some of the things that they can take more of a lead in, to be more responsible, more accountable, to make your life easier, what would you want to be available to those families?
I just want them to trust. I mean, I don't know that there's a thing or a person. These kids get recruited by the teams in our league and certainly the other private school conferences in our area. If you make that choice to go to a school, give it the opportunity that it deserves. And I think you got to do your homework. If I'm selling to a parent right now, talk to other parents who've been in the program. Talk to other players who've been in those programs. Again, I think I'll go back to saying what I said. You got to trust the process, and everyone's process is different. Great examples, Markel Fultz, freshman JV ball player, 2 years varsity to being the #1 draft pick. Mm-hmm. His process was a normal process for the kid who maybe wasn't even recruited in the high school, and look what it did for him. He did all his work in the dark, which allowed him to shine in the light at the end. And I think at times we think that just because we pick a certain school and we've seen what has happened for other kids that have gone to that school, that's just going to happen for my child. It doesn't work that way. I believe you got to be able to trust the coaches, give them the best opportunity to allow them to help your child go through his process, not necessarily the process that you want to just happen, because it doesn't happen that way.
So when you bring up a player like Markel, it sounds like he was a guy who trusted the process. He had great habits. He followed routines, and then he had the work ethic to put behind it.
I don't think the kids have a problem trusting the process. Mm-hmm. I think kids are going to do whatever the adults around them allow them or ask them to do. I think at times we become, as the adults, sometimes the crabs in the pot, and we want so much for our child immediately that we overthink it. And I think if you allow, again, I'll keep saying it, your child's process to be his process, it will work out in the end. As long as that child and the coaches who are coaching them put in the work that he deserves and give him the opportunity to be in the places that will allow him to get what he wants in the end.
So you've given a lot of really good advice to young players and families here today. I have one more question. It's a personal question about your son, who I've known for some time. I think the rumor is he went from 5'10" to 6'5" in a year, maybe 18 months. Do you have any advice to parents on how to make that happen with their child?
Everyone's been asking me that this year, and my best answer right now is Funyuns and hot Cheetos. Those are his snacks of choice, even though I try to get him off of them. And I say that jokingly. I think rest really was the key to his growth. I still am trying to figure out where the size came from. He has an older brother who's 6'3", 220. So, I mean, we expected that he would get a shot at it. I remember telling you, our physician told us he wasn't going to get over 6 feet. And he goes from less than a year, 5'10", 5'11", to about 6'4" now. So, again, everyone's process is different. I didn't expect for him to be this tall. But I think a part of it is the preventative maintenance. Right. I took him away from AAU a couple years, if you remember, and I allowed him to continue to play another sport. He's also a high-level lacrosse player, and he's been, unfortunately, put in a position the last couple of years to always feeling like he has to choose, and I think that's a shame. But we've tried to find a balance in terms of AAU basketball and high-level lacrosse, where the coaches understand that he's not a one-trick pony, and that he has an opportunity to use either of the sports to gain what we want as his parents, is him to get the best education. Right. I don't know that my son will ever be a pro in either one of the sports, but if he can use these two sports to have an opportunity to get the best degree so that he can afford himself an opportunity to fend for himself and maybe one day take care of his mom and dad, that's what I want. I think sometimes we throw all our eggs in one basket, and then when those dreams don't come through the way we want to point the blame at everybody else. I think these guys who can play 2 and 3 sports, do it as long as you can. Do it in moderation as well, because you don't want to overwork yourself. And then you got to do your homework. Find the coaches who are going to be understanding that this kid has an opportunity, not just in the sport that you coach, but possibly in another sport, and find a way to make it work.
Well, Coach, you're doing something right, or doing a lot of things right.
Trying.
So I really appreciate your time today. I know you're busy running camps this summer and doing what you do. So I wish you continued success, and I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you, and I thank you for all that I've watched you do for the youth in our community, and being able to help them stay on the court and on the field. So continue to do that, because we appreciate you.
We'll do our best. Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
All right.